What's up everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm Mickey. Today I'm going to talk to you about which QuickBooks you should buy for your business. Every time I do an implementation, I've got customers who ask me, what QuickBooks should I buy? As you know, there's 4 options in the QuickBooks world. There's QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Pro, Premier, and Enterprise. Today we're going to talk about the differences between those 4, and hopefully we're going to figure out which one you should buy to make the best decision for your business, to have a system that's going to keep you organized and up to date with your accounting and inventory for the next few years. So let's start with QuickBooks Online, and let's start with the pros. So the pros of QuickBooks Online, as you know, is that it's online. What does online mean? Online means that you log into QuickBooks Online through a browser, so you can use Chrome or Internet Explorer to access it. The next benefit or the next pro of QuickBooks Online is that it's cheap. So every month or so, QuickBooks or Intuit comes up with new specials to get more users to go to QuickBooks Online. So you'll find that QuickBooks Online will cost you anywhere from $5 a month to $50 a month, depending on the model that you buy. But long story short, it's very cost effective for an online platform. The third benefit of QuickBooks Online is that it has a great user interface. It's real friendly, it's real adaptive to mobile browsers, so you can access it from your iPad, your tablet, your iPhone, and you can see all the components on the screen very simply. And then I guess the fourth benefit that I've seen of QuickBooks Online is that it's Intuit's newest product, right? Which means that they're not going to leave it and stop supporting it. Which means that you're always going to have constant updates and new features and new things that come out so that they can keep you paying the monthly fee for their subscription. So those are the pros. Now I'm going to talk to you about the reasons why it doesn't make sense for a distributor to buy QuickBooks Online. First of all, relative to QuickBooks Pro and Premier, there is a monthly fee, right? So if you're just starting out and you don't want that monthly overhead, you just want to make the initial investment, then QuickBooks Online is not for you. Secondly, QuickBooks Online doesn't offer a good way to set up salesmen within the company. And when I talk about a salesman, I'm referring to an individual that's tied to a transaction. Basically, the reason why you want to be able to track this is because you want to track sales and credits for each of your salesmen so you can track commissions. So QuickBooks Online does not do a good job of tracking salesmen. Next, QuickBooks Online does not do a good job of doing price levels. So when you use something like QuickBooks Premier or Enterprise, for instance, you can set up a price level which allows you to vary the pricing by product, by customer. QuickBooks Online is slowly releasing the feature, but it's in beta and it's not 100% effective yet. That's one of the main reasons why most of our customers do not get QuickBooks Online. Next, and perhaps even more importantly for a distributor, is that QuickBooks Online doesn't offer units of measurement. So if you sell by the each and by the case, you may want to be able to, for instance, when you're making a transaction, you may want to select, hey, I'm selling this guy an each, this guy a case, or maybe you sell by the case and you want to credit by the each. QuickBooks Online does not let you do that. So as a distributor, if you sell by the case and you credit by the each, if QuickBooks Online doesn't allow you to credit by the each, that means that it's going to extremely mess up your inventory. So if you need units to measure, QuickBooks Online is not the right fit for you. The next reason why people don't go with QuickBooks Online, especially as you scale and become bigger and bigger, is that QuickBooks Online doesn't offer any production functionality. So like QuickBooks Enterprise offers production, lot traceability, serial numbers and lot numbers. It offers the ability to put in a production order and to decrease your raw goods while increasing your finished good inventory. I think for those that need production, QuickBooks Online is not the right fit for you. Lastly, the biggest con about QuickBooks Online is that QuickBooks has the support on it. What does that mean? So, for instance, we here at LaceUp, we use QuickBooks Online. We had an issue with our company file because it was getting kind of big since we've had it for a few years. We call into QuickBooks, their problem 100%, but they blamed the problem on our data and forced us to pay them $1,000 for advanced support for the entire year. so that they can then come in and fix the problem within 30 minutes. So with QuickBooks Online, they have somewhat of a support monopoly. There isn't a lot of independent third parties out there supporting the system. So as you scale, you're going to grow into some issues with the company file and with QuickBooks wanting to nickel and dime you for everything. So those are the pros and cons of QuickBooks Online. Normally, my customers who buy QuickBooks Online are 1 to 2 salesman operations. Once you start to scale, though, you want to start upgrading to QuickBooks Premier and Enterprise. So let's go ahead and talk about the pros and cons of those. So with Premier, now before we get into Premier, actually you're going to ask, well, why don't you cover Pro? The thing about Pro is that Pro is really the same thing as online. It's just offline. I always recommend to my customers, if it's between Pro and Online, go with Online because of the convenience. But again, that's up to you. For the most part, they do the same thing. Pro does offer a price level, but it's a price level per customer as opposed to a price level per product per customer. So again, if it's between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Pro, I go QuickBooks Online. If it's between QuickBooks Online, Pro, and Premier, I'm going to go QuickBooks Premier. So let's get into those pros and cons. So let's start with the Pro side. On the Pro side, you're going to get units of measurement. So you're going to be able to sell by the each or by the case. You're going to get price levels that have been implemented for years. So you can be able to set up a price per item per customer. You're going to get fixed assets or control of your fixed assets. So if you have something that depreciates over time, QuickBooks Premier allows you to do that, whereas Online doesn't have the functionality or isn't very good at it. You're going to obviously get salesman tracing. So as we talked about, when you have your, not tracing, but I mean salesman tracking. When you have your salesman set up in QuickBooks Premier, you can track their sales, their credits, sales versus credits, commissions, all that stuff, because you can associate a salesman to each transaction that is made. The next pro is that QuickBooks Premier obviously is a one-time fee. So you can pay $350 and have the QuickBooks that you're going to use for the next 3 or 4 years one time. Now it's $350, $300, $350 per user one time. So if you got 4 or 5 users, you're looking at about a $1,500 to $2,000 investment, but then you don't have to worry about that recurring fee hitting your credit card every month. So obviously those are the pros, and those are the reasons why most of my customers go with QuickBooks Premier. Now let's talk about the cons. The biggest con and the most obvious one relative to online is that it's not online, right? So which means that you can't access QuickBooks Premier from anywhere. Now what this means is that you can't log in from your home, you can't log in from your phone. Now companies like Trap Technologies, for instance, have found workarounds where you can host it online, but that adds a monthly recurring fee to the equation. So it's up to you if the pros plus moving it online, if the cost of that if the benefit of it outweighs the cost. So next, QuickBooks Premier does not offer advanced inventory. So relative to QuickBooks Enterprise, which does, with Premier, you don't have the option of doing multiple inventory locations. You don't have the option of doing first in, first out regarding costing and lot numbers. So QuickBooks Premier has a problem in that it uses your average cost for every time you sell an item. It uses your average cost on your cost of goods sold, which means that over time the cost becomes inaccurate. So it doesn't offer the option to say, okay, these 5 cases came in at this cost and these 10 cases came in at that cost. Those are things that QuickBooks Enterprise does. So that's while comparing Premier to Enterprise. Those are basically the cons of it. So in reality, there is one con versus online, which is that it's offline, obviously. And then versus Premier, you have production, you have costing, and you have those more advanced things that bigger businesses do need. But if I were to choose between online and Premier, I'm definitely going Premier. So any starting distributor should go with Premier. Lastly, and perhaps the most popular version of QuickBooks within our customer base, moreover, within our customer base doing between $5 and $20 million is QuickBooks Enterprise. Now let's talk about the pros there. Obviously the pros, as we've discussed before, is you can do production out of QuickBooks Enterprise. You can do first in, first out with taking into account lot numbers as well as your costs. So you can keep a cost for the incoming goods. So for instance, you know, the first 5 cases were $5 and the second 5 cases are $3. That gives you an actual cost as opposed to an average cost. You can do barcoding and scanning. And for some of my customers, perhaps most importantly, is that you can do advanced reporting. So all of these are great things about QuickBooks Enterprise. And keep in mind, this is QuickBooks Enterprise with advanced inventory. That's the one that you want. You don't want the cheap one. If you're just going to go down the cheap route, then you might as well just get QuickBooks Premier. So those are the pros of QuickBooks Enterprise. Now let's talk about the cons. Once again, QuickBooks Enterprise is offline. If you want to put it online, you have to pay a third party like Trap or Right Networks. So again, it's offline. Secondly, it's expensive. So QuickBooks Enterprise starts at $100 a month, even if it's one user, or right about there. And then it scales up. I've got customers paying between $600 to $1,000 a month for Enterprise. So it can get expensive. But keep in mind that those fees include updates to the system, ongoing support, and maintenance. So it may be worth it for you, especially if you're a bigger company. And then the biggest con, and this is an actual con regarding QuickBooks Enterprise, is that when you're purchasing Enterprise, it shows you one price because it's always on special. And within a year of having it, or after a year of having it, that price almost always duplicates. So if you're paying $300, you're not paying $500 to $600. If you're paying $100, you're not paying $200 to $300. Now it's something that they do advertise on the screen when you're purchasing it, but you don't think about it during the year that you're paying, let's say $100, and then all of a sudden after that first year, that price goes from $100 to $200, and you're like, wow, why did this increase so much? And it's just because of the way that they lower the cost to bring you in, and then they increase the cost once they have you as a customer because they know that you have nowhere to go. So keep that in mind as you buy QuickBooks Enterprise. Again, it's a great system. It's what I recommend to my customers. But keep in mind that issue with the cost. Now, I'm going to get into, for those of you that are larger customers, once you start making anywhere between, let's say, anything over $10 million a year, there's a big problem with QuickBooks Premier and Enterprise, and it's that the company file, or the let's say the data warehouse or the database that hosts all of your information starts getting too big, and QuickBooks' database is not made to maintain a huge company. As that file grows, QuickBooks gets slower, it starts having glitches, it starts having data problems, and basically it starts requiring a lot of maintenance to keep up to date, which eventually leads most of my customers to either creating a new company file on a yearly basis or switching from QuickBooks Enterprise to a bigger ERP system like Dynamics or Sage or SAP Business One. So if you're a big company doing anywhere between 10 to 20 million, even actually if you're like 7, 8, 9, 10 million and above, I would really recommend studying the adverse effects of having QuickBooks and making sure that you're okay with them before going through and purchasing it, only to realize that a year down the road your company file has exploded and now you need to figure out what to do with your accounting system. So that's a little asterisk, a little disclaimer about QuickBooks Premier and Enterprise. Keep that in mind about the company file. Now, if y'all have any other questions, please hit me in the comments. I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Stay tuned for more videos on our channel. I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.